guys? It's Dameon, aka Investor Poppy with A to Z Investments out of Dallas, Texas. I'm here to show you guys how to leverage being a real estate investor and how that helps me be a better father and husband to my family. So today the topic is, the question I get a lot is, how can I sell my house and how much does it cost to sell my house? So that's a pretty loaded question, simply because there's two different ways that you can kind of go about it. There's a more traditional way and there's the untraditional way that you can go about it. So the traditional way is the way that people go usually, was going through a realtor, and they put it on MLS, they go through the process, they find a buyer, finds a home, and they close the process in about like a month or so, or 45 days, depending on the lender. That way is all good and dandy if you care to wait that long. And a lot of people don't understand that when you're selling a house that costs you going through that way. Typically the seller pays about 9 to 10% on average as far as their selling price. So what I mean by that, there's 3% to the listing agent that listed your property on MLS. You have to pay that. You also have to pay 3% to the buyer's agent for the buyer, for the person who brought the buyer to your property to actually sell it. The seller also usually has to pay that. And also you have to pay for title policies, concessions, stuff like that, all wrapped into closing costs, which evens out about 9 to 10% averagely throughout the nation. And so a lot of sellers don't take that into consideration, especially sellers that have only had their house for a couple of years, where they don't really have built enough equity in their house, where they're actually having to come to a closing table actually paying to sell their house. And a lot of agents don't understand that, that puts their seller in a difficult position, especially if they need the money for something else. So there's an untraditional way that you can usually do it as well for those type of sellers. And this is something I didn't really learn. I am an agent in Florida and also in Texas. And I didn't learn any of this until just probably not gonna say a few months ago, earlier this year. It's about 7 months ago, that there's a untraditional way they can go about helping those guys out. Because at the end of the day, as your fiduciary duty as a agent, you should be taking care of your sellers at the end of the day. So a lot of the times agents don't understand that it's best to go to an investor, those type of things, simply because that number that the investor gives them is really their number that the seller is going to be able to take away from the home. It's not 9 to 10% off of the sales price. And typically the investor always kind of usually pays for closing costs, typically. And like I say, everything in real estate is negotiable. So you can kind of leverage the commissions to the agent. You can leverage, you can negotiate the closing cost, who's going to pay that. You can negotiate who's going to do whatever repairs, so on and so forth. But also working with investors, they usually understand they buy properties as is. So typically their price is going to be a lot lower than a traditional buyer would do it, just because they're going to take into consideration the rehabs, the closing costs, the whatever the case is, the loan amount due to their lender, how much they can loan them for the interest rate. And everybody knows interest rates are going up, so they're causing investors to buy at a lot lower price, or a lot deeper discounts than they typically would do before. But dealing with an investor has its benefits, because at the same time, agents can kill deals. Would you paying that 6% to an agent's commission, that can take you out of the ballpark of really making anything from your house if you have no equity. But if you go with an investor, they're gonna cut agents' commissions out. There's no agent commissions with an investor. You don't have to list it with an investor. You don't have to list it on the market at all. You can just go to an investor and they tell you what they're gonna pay for it, and that's just the money. So there's no agent commissions, which is a first benefit. And also there's no closing costs. Usually buyers that are working as investors, they usually take care of the closing costs, so the seller can actually walk away with what they said they're gonna walk away with, which is a lot of benefits I like taking care of. Personally, I am a agent investor, so I like to ring everything around a relationship basis. So I tend to listen to what the seller has and what they need rather than the property. And it just kind of best helps them in the situation that they're in, depending if they have no equity. If they're in pre-foreclosure, a lot of agents don't understand how to help sellers in pre-foreclosure, but agents do. So it may be a sense where you may want to talk to an investor to kind of help you out of that situation, because there's multiple ways, which I'll probably post another video talking about that. But I think if you do go with the realtor route, I think you should get a well-versed realtor that understands the investor side of things, just in case you may come into something, especially with the market going the way it is now. There's a lot more investor activity, just because home buyers are not able to afford the monthly payments that lenders are asking nowadays, or nor are they able to qualify for the loans, just because it's so high. Like I read somewhere that a $300,000 home, back probably like a few years ago, when the interest rates were lower, cost about $12,000 a month, which is great. But nowadays it's like around 1,900, and then you stack that on top of saying the raise in gas prices, the raise in groceries, the raise in everything. Basically, everything's going up. So you tack that onto your house payment. I mean, that just knocks you out of having anything affordable for yourself. So, food for thought. If you're wondering how to sell your house and how much it costs, usually typically it's 9 to 10% that you're taking off of your sales price if you go through a traditional way. And it's usually likely, I'm not gonna say all the time it's zero, but a lot of times you're going to investor, it's beneficial, but you don't have to necessarily worry about closing costs. Definitely don't have to worry about agent commission. And like I said, even with dealing with a realtor, agent's commission is definitely negotiable. You can say, hey, I'll list it with you for 2% instead of 3%. You can negotiate with the buyer's agent, say I'm only giving you about 2.5% to 2%, same difference. So just make sure if you're if you're a realtor helping out a seller, make sure they know all the options they have, not just one. And just check out more videos here. Make sure you do click the like and subscribe button, and make sure you leave comments to let me know what other topics you guys want to talk about. All right.